What's going on, everybody? It is your boy, Crypto Bobby. I hope you are having a great day, great night, wherever you're watching or listening in from. And welcome to another episode, another edition of Crypto Happy Hour. Plan for today, if you are joining from the jump, shout out to Crypto Mogul and to Dumbo. But plan for the day is that the Jets are playing on Monday Night Football. Starts at 8:15 Eastern. So going to stream up till when the Jets play and inevitably lose and piss me off for the rest of the week. So that is the plan for this evening. What's going on, Garrett? Hope you're having a good one. And today, really, outside of my future plans of the Jets pissing me off, but outside of the future plans for that, want to talk a little bit about what's been happening recently. There's been a little bit of news around Libra. There's been a little bit of news around, or there's been some kind of increasing conversation around the Binance exit from the US or / entrance into the US. So a little bit interesting there. And then we also have Ethereum for the first time, like in a damn blue moon, is up about 5%. And some of the other altcoins are up a little bit as well. And as you can see, the title is This Alt Season. I'm mostly joking. I'm being facetious. Obviously, Bitcoin is still at a massive dominance percentage, close to 70% right now. But I want to talk a little bit more just about everything in general. And we're at 69% dominance, so nice, real nice. But yeah, we'll talk about all that and more in today's discussion. Just taking a look at some of the comments here as well. Shout out to Garrett, Chris, Andrew, Travis, Dumbo as well. And one of the first things I think we could talk about today too is around a little bit around David Marcus and the Facebook response to the threat about Libra. And if you haven't been paying attention, I'm sure most of you have, but if you haven't been paying attention, obviously, Facebook has created the Libra, or is in the process of creating the Libra cryptocurrency, which is supposed to be a stable coin. And a lot of governments are really threatened by what Facebook is doing. So much so that both France and Germany came out and said that this is going to underpin the monetary safety of what we do in Europe. And France said that it poses a significant threat to monetary sovereignty. And I don't know why I couldn't even pronounce that right. But we also had Germany saying the same thing around the threat that Libra is creating in Europe and just across the globe. So you had David Marcus come out with this Twitter thread about nations versus Libra, talking about there's been a lot of talk around how Libra could threaten the nations when it comes to money, and wanted to take the opportunity to debunk that notion, saying that Libra is quote unquote designed to be a better payment network and system running on top of the existing currencies, saying that it is a complementary piece and not a threat to what the governments are doing. Obviously, certain governments will take that in different ways and with varying levels of trust. But basically, the thesis, if you've done your kind of research around it, what Libra is doing is taking a basket and just kind of combining a bunch of quote unquote strong government currencies. You might think like the U.S. dollar, the euro, the yen, yuan, whatever it might be, taking a basket and creating a very flat asset for people to transact. But when I think governments look at that, they, number one, think that, hey, this is competitive against what we're doing, as well as they also don't like Facebook, because Facebook is Facebook. So there are a number of things that are going against Facebook. They still say that they're trying to launch now at the end of 2020. I'm still pretty skeptical around whether or not Facebook is actually going to launch when they say they will launch. I just think there's going to be so much government pressure now that now that France and Germany have already come out, said negative things about it. I have a hard time believing that other governments aren't going to come out, and I think the U.S. is still going to kind of remain putting pressure on Facebook around this. Other companies that are in the quote unquote Libra consortium, I think they might feel some pressure and look at this and say, is the juice worth the squeeze? Do we really care that much about this that we're going to potentially get in trouble? So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But long story short, I do think that this is going to drag on for quite some time, and Facebook is going to continually get pressure, and you're going to see this in the news all the time. And if you guys are drinking anything interesting right now, so I have Red Stripe. I am in New York and not in Jamaica, but if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen last night I made jerk chicken, or like 8 pounds of jerk chicken. So I still have some leftover Red Stripe, because if I'm going to make jerk chicken, I got to have it with Red Stripe, so why not? So still have a little bit left, and I actually kind of like Red Stripe. It's pretty solid beer. So good question here from Lars, and I'll see if I could pull it up if it's maybe on Bloomberg. But this is something that a number of people were talking about in a couple of the different Telegram groups I'm in. But J.P. Morgan is in pretty big trouble for some traders that they had in their house. 3 J.P. Morgan traders were actually criminally indicted by U.S. prosecutors for rigging futures trades in precious metals for nearly a decade, made a ton of money off it, millions and millions of dollars, also at the expense of counterparties, which included their own bank's clients. So basically, they're ripping off their own clients. And this was a few different traders. It's, according to them, 3 different traders. And they were manipulating and spoofing, spoofing the order books and trades. So interesting in a couple different ways. Sounds like this is just the tip of the iceberg for JP Morgan on this. And then also, when you look at it, somebody was bringing this up in one of the Telegram chats I'm in, and had mentioned that looking at what happened with the Mongol, 1 DMB or 1 MDB, what do we got? I was getting the right acronym there. But looking what happened with Goldman's 1 MDB, which if you haven't seen that, check it out. Also, I think it's $1 Billion Whale is the name of the book that I've read about Joe Lowe, which is pretty crazy as well. But Goldman's entanglement with 1 MDB and kind of how that may or may not have led to Goldman's CEO kind of having a nice little farewell tour, but ultimately kind of getting the boot. People have already started talking about, if this is a big enough deal, what does that mean for Jamie Dimon and the CEO position at JP Morgan? Jamie Dimon has done well in the past. Jamie Dimon is also notoriously not a fan of Bitcoin and most other crypto assets. So when you look at that, is this something that you have, kind of a greater insight into what ends up happening with these traders and this criminal indictment that goes on? And is this big enough in the long run? Is this manipulation of the precious metals market? And how deep that actually goes? Is this big enough to actually result in the potential departure of JP Morgan's CEO? We'll have to see. And I mean, just looking at this in the broad spectrum of, is this good for Bitcoin? Because that's the question. Everything's good for Bitcoin, right? But is this good for Bitcoin, or is this good for cryptocurrencies? As far as all of this goes, I have no clue. I mean, even if Jamie Dimon does, stepping back, even if Jamie Dimon does at some point in time leave, there's no necessarily no specific kind of focus that says, hey, there is a new CEO candidate that's incredibly bullish on Bitcoin and wants to enable cryptocurrency trading for JP Morgan, or that's a complete massive assumption and a huge leap. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's good or bad, but interesting and worth keeping an eye on. And also goes to show that there obviously is still a ton of just manipulation in the general financial markets that may or may not affect you in any way whatsoever. But certainly people still make a lot of money off of it. So Andrew Rivers says this quick Q: has there been an ICO or any new coin that's come along in the past 18 months that you think has any potential? It's an interesting question, and to be really, really straightforward, I haven't done a ton of due diligence on things that have come onto the market in the past 6 months. There are a lot of, so I would say this: when you're looking at these, when you're looking at just these ICO projects, these IEOs now too, I think for the most part, it's fairly clear that token models in general need a lot of work. Like, unless there just isn't a ton of, I think, thought by many people in terms of how the token model is going to be structured, and the economics behind that, and how that may or may not affect the price increase or price decrease. And mostly it's around the price decrease. And when you look at a lot of this stuff, I think a lot of these cryptocurrencies are basically made to not perform well over the long term, because especially for a lot of these ICOs, you look at the team and the advisors and lockups and things like that. And in many respects, that type of thing is continued sell pressure on the market. The one thing I think that is relatively interesting is there's this whole new batch of like third generation platforms coming onto like Ethereum competitors. Let's say Ethereum was the Gen 1 platform, EOS, Tron, that type of thing, or like Gen 2. And now you've had like Algorand come live. You have I think Hashgraph HBAR is starting to trade in like the next week or so. There's a bunch of different like you're gonna have Definity at some point in time, maybe, who knows. There's all these different like third generation super scalable blockchains. But with that, you also have to look at the actual token. I don't want to say the word token economics because it's kind of bullshit. I don't have a great spreadsheet around that, but when just looking at like how a lot of these projects have been, I think they're pretty much just like encouraging retail to just get their face ripped off. Looking at like where early on investors bought them and where the lockups are. Like, let's just say, for example, there is a new third generation blockchain platform that's launching right now. Maybe they raised money a year and a half ago. They raised $100 million. Their tokens costed, maybe the first round of investors paid 1 cent for their token. The next round of investors paid 3 cents for their token. And now they're doing some type of financial fuckery around it, where they're saying, hey, this token is now worth 10 cents or whatever it might be. Well, if the token is worth 10 cents and that's the first thing that quote unquote retail can buy it at, these non-accredited investors can buy it at, well, retail's buying it at 10 cents. Guess who's selling it to them? The people that invested at 1 cent and 3 cents or wherever that might be. So I think that's what you need to also be concerned about when you look at some of these like new super sexy scalable platforms that are coming out, because there are people that invested earlier than you. And when you look at what's happened with the market in total, I think people are less likely to be greedy, especially quote unquote smart money. But I think people are less likely to be greedy. And if they say, hey, I got a 2-3x or whatever it might be, I'm going to take some money off the table, and I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of that token. You're buying that, and there's not a ton of buy. I don't think there's going to be a ton of buy support for a lot of these new ICOs or tokens that are coming live in the market. So that's just my general like thought process. I don't personally think that there is a ton. I don't personally think that there is a ton of new retail money coming into the space right now. I think retail money is still, for the most part, kind of like mostly flatlined, maybe even going down a little bit as far as like the new retail money. So I would be hesitant to think that there's going to be this new rush of people that are going to come in and buy a venture capitalist bags is my thought process there. So my man Kyle says, I'm sure you already talked about it, but do you think the Jets take the Browns? I know most nobody cares about the Jets. I'm a huge Jets fan. Went to the game last week. It's awful. Jets blew a 16-point lead. Classic Jets. Lost the Bills. Terrible loss. Not only that, but Sam Darnold, the starting quarterback, who I think is going to be solid, has mono. I haven't heard of like anybody over 16 years old getting mono since like I ever. And then we also lost our starting middle linebacker and first round draft pick, interior D lineman. So I'm going to say that the Jets are not going to be the Browns, and I'm going to sit there and drink a lot of these red stripes and just not be super happy. So I'm still somewhat positive on the Jets in like the long run of this season, but with Sam Darnold out, Quincy Enunwa out, we're going to get smoked. So looking at some more of these questions, and guys, make sure to toss any questions you have in the chat. Always happy to answer as many of those as I possibly can there as well. And this is another thing that's relatively interesting. I'm not personally a huge. I think that the BitPay, if anybody's actually used BitPay, I know like there's a whole Bitcoin kind of maximalist type thing, or just Bitcoiner type thing about like F BitPay, use BTC Pay server. Also, on another note, Square, to that point, Square Crypto actually donated a grant to BTC Pay server, which is kind of like an open source crypto or Bitcoin payment acceptance payment gateway, which is actually pretty cool of Square. I thought that was a really cool thing for Square to do, is basically funding a competitor that's developing open source software. Not something that I think most companies would do. But again, we've talked about Square in the past, and I think Square is at such a unique position in the cryptocurrency ecosystem because they have an incredibly profitable business that is completely unrelated to Bitcoin. And that gives them the luxury to be really intentional about everything that they do when it does come down to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And it makes them, I think they're just being very smart about how they're approaching things in general. So shout out to Square for that, but I went on a tangent. Shocker, I went on a tangent. But BitPay is launching Ethereum support in the next few weeks. BitPay is still probably the largest e-commerce payment provider in crypto. Traditionally, I think they've just done Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, but now they're going to be utilizing Ethereum as well. So that might allow them to, it sounds like it's going to also support stable coins. So USDC, the Gemini dollar, which has kind of fallen off the map as far as actual usage, and the Paxos token as well. So I think that it's pretty cool that this is happening. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the BitPay user experience. I don't really want to trash the company for one way or another. It is what it is. If you like BitPay, great. If you don't like BitPay, but the fact that you have to use BitPay's wallet, my problem with BitPay in general is that you have to use BitPay's wallet to pay for to pay with the app, rather than just being able to, like, rather than with a gateway having Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum or whatever it is, and just being able to send an address. You actually have to send your crypto. Your crypto has to be in the BitPay wallet to do that first, which is not a favorable user experience, at least in my opinion, because it just adds another kind of complex step in between. I know there are reasons for that, but it's still not something that I particularly enjoy. The Mad Cow says Sparkster. RIP and peace, Sparkster. So this is also, and this is kind of the reason I was just kidding around with the "Is this alt season?" title on YouTube, but I do think that "Is this alt season?" is now like the biggest meme or one of the biggest memes in crypto. There's a lot of memes in crypto, but it is still really funny how I think you've seen this over the past year. You've seen this just kind of consistent loss of hope around altcoins. I think a lot of people initially either they rode the pump all the way up or maybe they bought the top, but they were just so, they saw what happened. Like, hey, this is going to happen again. Hey, this is going to happen again. And every day, every fleeting moment is, this isn't happening again. This isn't happening again. And people just kind of losing faith in quote unquote alt season or just any type of positive movement in altcoins. And there really hasn't been any. I mean, Bitcoin has just absolutely dominated things, especially while Bitcoin has had that run up from 3,000 all the way to 10,000 bucks or $14,000. Altcoins just simply haven't kept pace. If not, they've even gone down against US dollars while Bitcoin has tripled. And it does take into account supply and demand and the fact that really there is not a huge or any demand for altcoins outside of purely speculation. And if no one is speculating on these assets, you have speculators dumping these assets and getting rid of them so that they can cut their losses. And that's essentially where we're at right now. And that's kind of where we've been at for a long time, is that altcoins are, and altcoins always have been, but altcoins are solely speculative assets that people buy and hope to sell at a later date. For the most part, you're not going to use an altcoin to actually fulfill its quote-unquote intended purpose, if it even has one. So you have this kind of cascading waterfall of speculators exiting their positions as they lose hope in specific projects and teams and things like that. And that's where we've been. So it is funny just to see how negative everybody is anytime you mention anything about alts ever doing well. And it's just kind of the reason why I like it too. And if you are watching this right now on YouTube, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button, smash it, do whatever the hell you want to it, or hit the thumbs down button too. That's fine, but hit the thumbs up button. Helps to get this video out to as many people as possible, and I always appreciate that. So somebody says next alt season early 2022. I'm gonna be over 30 then. Shit. So I mean maybe it's definitely possible. That's a long time away, but yeah, it's definitely possible. And Crypto Mind says this, and I do think that this is something that is kind of the two biggest things to watch in my mind are Bitcoin's happening and ETH 2.0 or Ethereum 2.0. Obviously, Bitcoin's happening is you basically know exactly when that's going to happen, and you can do a lot. You can anticipate a lot going up for the Bitcoin happening. You can know exactly when that's, or roughly when that's going to take place. Ethereum 2.0, ETH 2.0 is a little bit more up in the air. There have been delivery issues and timing issues in the past, but things seem to be moving in a pretty positive direction. And I do think that I'm still, a lot of people are super down on ETH. A lot of people are down on Ethereum. I'm still super bullish on Ethereum. I'm also a little bit of a sucker for ETH. I think that the community is I think that Ethereum is the only thing that has anywhere near the actual demand and interest outside of Bitcoin. I still think Bitcoin is obviously Big Daddy. Bitcoin has the most clear-cut use case out of anything. Bitcoin's technology does exactly what it says it's going to do, and just works, and will likely continue to work for the foreseeable future. I do think that Ethereum's scaling ambitions are potentially more ambitious, but ambitious may or may not be a good thing when you come down to the amount of money that's at stake. It's not exactly Facebook's move fast and break things when you have a bunch of your own money in Ethereum or in DeFi or in any of these other components. But I think that the two big things and the two kind of largest events that I would keep an eye on as things continue to occur are the launch of ETH 2.0 if and when it ever does launch, as well as Bitcoin's halvening. And I will continue to dollar cost average into both Ethereum or into ETH and into BTC for the time being, as we head into those run-ups. ABQ golfer, WTF, I thought you were 45. Now, man. Gotcha. And Michael gives the question that everybody's been waiting for. Hey Bobby, do you fuck with the White Claws? I can drink some White Claws. I would much prefer beer, but White Claws are a little bit easier on the stomach, I guess, if you have an upset stomach. But White Claws are good if you are in the heat of the summer and it's 90 plus degrees and you just want to crush something that basically tastes like water and get a little bit of a buzz. That's what White Claws are good for. Would I sit in my couch and drink a White Claw? No, I wouldn't. Am I going to sit on my couch after this and drink a bunch of beer? Yes, I am. So I would drink White Claw at a tailgate or at like I don't know, whatever. But it's alcoholic water. I mean, it's bubbly alcoholic water. And this is also, too, something I think that is worth taking a look into. SparkSwap. So I haven't gotten a chance to use this yet. They do have strong backing. Initialized Capital is I think, pretty well-respected Gary Tan venture firm. But this is something that I think is necessary for you to see some more adoption with a Lightning Network. And this is SparkSwap, which allows you to utilize their desktop app and take your US dollars and buy Bitcoin directly with the Litecoin network. So you can go from US dollars in your bank account directly to Bitcoin within Lightning without having to take any other steps in between. So this is, I think, something that will definitely simplify and remove some of the simplify and remove some of the issues around the Lightning Network growth. I still don't necessarily know. I am moderately bullish on the growth of Litecoin. Litecoin, not Litecoin. I'm not super bullish on Litecoin. I'm moderately bullish on the growth of the Lightning Network. And I think this is a necessary step, a necessary product in general for it to continue to grow and to continue to succeed. Do I think that this is going to all of a sudden kickstart, incredible massive growth? No, not necessarily at all. But this type of thing is definitely necessary for Lightning to improve and for more people to use it. If you have a few different merchants that you really like to utilize, there are now some merchants that accept Lightning Network payments, and this is an easier way to do that for sure. If you have Bitcoin in the Lightning Network. On another note too, I got a chance. I went to ETH Boston, which was a great event. I was there for about half the time. But some of the just second level or second layer scaling work that's being done is really pretty incredible. There was a company there, Off Chain Labs, that I do a little bit of work for with Proof of Talent as well. Really solid people, but they had a first level demo of their product called Arbitrum, and it's built on top of Ethereum right now. But it's pretty cool because it is second layer scaling, and it works directly within MetaMask. So they kind of remove the actual aspect of the user, even knowing that they're interacting with a second layer solution or layer 2 solution. They completely abstract that, and I think that's the type of thing as well that if you can abstract some of the issues or just some of the user experience components around using faster solutions, be it Lightning Network or be it some type of layer 2 scaling solution on Ethereum, if you can abstract that from the user experience, I think that's the type of thing that really is necessary to make a difference. And what I mean by that when I just say abstract that out is basically you're just you have the example that they gave was basically you had a Connect 4 piece, or you had a Connect 4 game, and you had to put in one transaction, one Ethereum transaction to basically start the game. And once you did that, you were transacting on, you were able to transact kind of on layer 2. So any future things that were happening within the actual Connect 4 game, as you were making moves, that was happening with layer 2, and you were able to confirm those moves on MetaMask, but the user actually really had no idea what was happening. So I thought that was pretty awesome. What's up, Reynaldo? Thanks a lot for that super chat, man. What's good? If I send you 0.5 BTC, would I send you 3 BTC back? Unfortunately, no. You can send me 0.5 BTC. I might not send you any back, but if you want to send me 0.5 BTC, I'd be happy for that. So we got a little bit of a food debate going on right now. Brad Anderson says, "Hey Bobby, you ever tried an In-N-Out burger or a San Diego carne asada burger?" I've had In-N-Out. I've been to San Francisco quite a bit for just for work. I mean, working in crypto between New York and San Francisco, usually a bunch. And anytime I'm in San Francisco, I typically try to stop for In-N-Out. Usually get the, I guess, double animal style, I think is the move. I don't love the fries, but In-N-Out's burgers are solid. I do like Shake Shack as well. I think Shake Shack is a wonderful burger. I also think Five Guys is a wonderful burger. You see Cookout mentioned. Garrett, I went to college in North Carolina, and there was a Cookout pretty close to campus. And the only time Cookout is edible is if you are about 20 beers deep at 4 o'clock in the morning. Otherwise, Cookout, no bueno. Dragon Ball BTC says this. Hey, Bobby, what are your thoughts on Hedera Hashgraph? So I think there was a question before that talked a little bit about, like, what are my thoughts on some of these upcoming ICOs? And I personally, I think, let's see. So I believe Hedera, the Hashgraph tokens are being, if I can, where's dark mode? Get this off me. Whatever. I think Hashgraph tokens are I think Hashgraph tokens are coming at some point in time in the near future. I don't. I think it's like this week or something like that. I've seen some people talking about really high OTC trading prices for Hashgraph, but I also think that I think with with Hashgraph in general, if their OTC prices are really high, that was somewhat of what I was alluding to. Is there are some earlier investors that got in quite a bit early. I think some people like to think that the technology with Hashgraph could be really interesting. I am not a software engineer by trade. I am slightly technical enough to know the difference with some of these different protocols, but I just get a little bit. I get a little bit skeptical around the. I get a little bit skeptical around the third gen blockchain products and protocols in general. Like I was at a meetup the other night in New York City, and there was a third gen protocol that was talking, and basically the entire pitch was why Bitcoin was bad, why Ethereum was bad, why they're never going to work, why they're never going to scale, and why their protocol is better. And I think every single protocol kind of goes on with that, and even Ethereum has led with that in the past too. So I guess there's nothing new, but basically the marketing around all of these is, hey, nothing else can do what we can do, and we're going to be the best, and we're going to be the most scalable. And every time everybody has to, nobody wants to acknowledge the trade-offs, and that's what you have to think about. in every one of these scenarios with these protocols or with these things that are trying to be the next Ethereum or whatever they might be, or trying to be the, the decentralized world computer, or this platform play, whatever it might be. You have to think about that in general, is that there are issues around, there are just generally speaking, there are issues around the scalability and how centralized something is. Nobody wants to say this product, this platform is centralized. So they're going to overcomplicate that, whether that is with some type of governance council, whether that is with some type of different nodes across the board, whatever it might be. I'm just skeptical around the marketing of really high TPS. Actually, let's see here. Eric Wall. So if you want to read this is, I think, a good article. And this sums up a lot of my thoughts. So we can talk about this in a little bit more depth. So take this for what it's worth. But I like Eric Wall's research. It's typically pretty solid. And I think he's pretty upfront with what he's thinking about in this. So actually, I guess it's today that Hedera Hashgraph is launching. So he kind of starts off and says, okay, so Hedera Hashgraph is launching on September 16th. It is a third generation DLT, and it can do 10,000 transactions per second. Obviously, that sounds freaking fantastic when you compare that with Bitcoin being able to do about 3 transactions per second, maybe 7 if you're being generous. Ethereum doing like 12 to 15. And then you also have the average fee on Bitcoin around 20 cents. That's probably higher now. And the average fee on Ethereum around 13 cents. And you have these transaction times of, with Ethereum, 10 to 20 seconds, Bitcoin 10 to 60 minutes. And then Hedera apparently confirms in 3 to 5 seconds with finality. So basically, you look at this, and Hedera's Hashgraph's transaction fees are less than 1/10 of a cent. So you look at that and you think, wow, like Hashgraph is the future. Like this is the best thing that's ever happened, right? This is just the best thing that this world has ever seen. But you have to dive into a lot. You have to dive into things a lot more. And so he goes into some really different, or just some really specific arguments or thought processes around why the kind of achievement of transactions per second and why the relationship there is mostly marketing and not necessarily the best, just not necessarily the best thing, and why, in a lot of cases you need to be skeptical around the transactions per second number that they talk about quite a bit. So it does get into really good depth. I'm not going to say I don't have enough time here, but it does get into quite a bit of depth around Bitcoin core implementations and really the restrictions around transactions per second, and into block sizes and into different components around that. So if you are somewhat technical or just really interested in this, even if you have no thought process around Hashgraph at all, it's worth reading the article. And again, I put it in the YouTube comments there, so you can check that out. But it's worth reading. It's a pretty entertaining article that I enjoy and tend to mostly just agree with around the just around these like super fast, ultra scalable TPS blockchains that are going to revolutionize and change the world, and still be incredibly and perfectly decentralized. So that's been a little bit of like my thought process in general around this stuff. Julio says, I was watching The Office. Is it true that the best New York pizza is at Sbarro's? I like Joe's Pizza and John's at Bleecker Street. Sbarro's is it's beautiful, home, fresh Italian. You have the grandpa in the back, rolling throwing the dough. Sbarro's is probably up there, actually. Sbarro's is better than John's at Bleecker. It's better than Joe's. It's just about as it's better than anything in the world. So yeah, I would say Sbarro's is the best. So Wookie says this: what is your view on the pie share of privacy coins in the whole crypto economy? That's a good question, and there's also I think it's relatively interesting because today, or in the past, today, you had OKX Korea delisting all of the privacy coins, including Monero, Zcash, and Dash, as these apparently violate the FATFA or FTFA, the travel rule, which is associated with kind of an international coalition, the Financial Action Task Force. So it is a global money laundering organization, and so OKX Korea said, "Hey, we're going to get rid of Monero, Dash, Zcash, Horizon, or Zen, which I think used to be Zencash, and Super Bitcoin." I have no idea what the hell Super Bitcoin is, but apparently that is getting the boot as well. And it's interesting for a couple different reasons. Number one, they're looking and kind of blaming this on FATFA or FTFA and saying that this is something that violates the laws there. I think that when you look at like Zcash is on Gemini and I believe on Coinbase Pro now. So Zcash is one that, because of the optional privacy, I'm still curious about that, and almost no one on Zcash actually uses shielded transactions. I think it's like 5 or 10%, which is pretty funny. Like, Zcash is this privacy cryptocurrency, but actually nobody uses the privacy features. But I think privacy is obviously a huge issue. Privacy is something that I think is just generally speaking, a massive issue in the crypto ecosystem. Let me see if I can pull up. I think was it John Todaro? So here we go. This is from James, Joe, and John Todaro, Blocktown Capital. They have a crypto fund, a small crypto fund, but they talk about the need for privacy. And if you're not familiar, just in general, with this is something that if you don't know about, I'm sure most of you know about this. There's a lot of people that preach privacy and coin mixing, things like that now on Twitter and on YouTube and the podcast game as well. A lot of those folks like that. So when you look at Bitcoin right now, there are services out there. There are companies like Chainalysis, formerly like a Neutrino or an Elliptic, or some of those other ones. But like Chainalysis is really the biggest one. And so what happens is, or what's already happened is, if you've ever KYC'd, let's say you KYC'd at Coinbase. So Coinbase knows your address is whatever your Bitcoin address is. Coinbase knows your Bitcoin address, and they basically tell that, or Chainalysis works with Coinbase. So Chainalysis assigns your Bitcoin address to your name. So they know, like, hey, this is Rob. This is his Bitcoin address. So when I send my Bitcoin off of Coinbase, I think a lot of people traditionally think like, oh, I sent my Bitcoin off of Coinbase, like no big deal, right? Like they can't, like they're not going to track me now. I'm free. I'm away. That's not the case at all. So once you send your Bitcoin from Coinbase, where you're KYC'd or any other, like, or Gemini or Kraken or whatever it might be, your name is associated with that Bitcoin, and they can tell kind of through the transaction history, even like tens and hundreds of hops. Meaning, like, if I sent my Bitcoin from my Coinbase account to an address, to another address, to another address, to another address, to another address, and just tried to hop it away so that eventually it would kind of get lost, they still track that. So they're able to attribute your like legal name to your Bitcoin ownership, and they can do that across numerous blockchains and things like that. So they can do that across numerous blockchains, and that is what Blocktown Capital says in kind of the start of this. In essence, anyone who's executed a Bitcoin transaction from an exchange registered in their legal name likely has most of their transaction history and Bitcoin holdings reconstructed and recorded in an institutional database, probably something powered by a Chainalysis or an internal compliance tool from a Coinbase or from a Gemini or for whoever it is. And the IRS and all these other kind of government entities are utilizing this stuff as well. So they say, hey, this is something that privacy is basically completely eliminated. You probably, even if you were trying to be smart, if you've ever KYC'd on any of these services, your name is basically out there and somebody knows who you are and has linked your Bitcoin back to you. So what happens now? That requires a need for privacy, but there's not great privacy with Bitcoin, right? Maybe you can mix, maybe you can do some coin join, but still that's not perfect. So when you look at that says, hey, these privacy coins, maybe a Zcash, maybe a Monero, are really important. However, when I look at, when I look just generally speaking at like Zcash from an investment perspective, or Monero from an investment perspective, I still think most people either are blissfully unaware about how significantly their assets are tracked on chain with blockchain analytics providers, or just don't care, or they won't care until they get audited or whatever it might be. So I think most people are blissfully unaware. I also think Zcash's emission rate is way too high. And you can clearly see that if you pull up the Zcash chart. I mean, it is it's a stair step down from hell. If we pull up Zcash to let's play now. Zcash to Bit. 1 second, we'll pull it out on the week. Yeah, so it's basically been down against Bitcoin since it's down. Zcash is down 95% against Bitcoin in the past 800 days. I don't necessarily, it might have a bump, it might be all right, but yeah, that emission schedule, that inflation scares the living bejesus out of me. So regardless of whether or not there are issues with privacy, which there are, that is really undeniable. There is quite a bit of issue with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all these other more prominent public blockchains. There's a lot of issues when you're transacting there, if you've ever been KYC'd, but I don't necessarily know if that justifies an investment thesis in Zcash. I personally bought Zcash. I felt the pain of Zcash. I bought Monero. It didn't do as bad as Zcash, but didn't do as well as Bitcoin either. So Verge will prosper. No, Dogecoin Dark ain't doing shit. So where do we? Ricky Thompson, that's why the FBI loves crypto for crimes. If you use non-privacy coins, they can eventually track it back to you. Yeah, I mean it's been pretty well known. Buying anything or illegally transacting with cryptocurrency is a law enforcement officer's wet dream. It is very trackable. If there are just numerous ways, there is a publicly visible paper trail. If you use cash, good luck. Like that's if I bring $1 million of cash in a duffel bag, it's pretty hard to track. If I transact $1 million in Bitcoin, well, anybody could go to a block explorer, bounce that one place, and if you're utilizing a blockchain analysis software tool out there, then you can get a lot further than that. Garrett, where did I go to school in North Carolina? I went to Elon University. So yeah, went to Elon. Small school in North Carolina. Sure, most people don't know it that well. ABQ Golfer says, Bobby, you are losing your influence. Bitcoin has only dumped 0.33% since I came on tonight. I am sorry for anybody who's opened up their shorts since I went live. Unfortunately, I did not come in clutch for you, but I think that's God out there just saying, you know what, Rob, you're about to endure some pretty bad things with the New York Jets. So we're gonna, we're gonna let you, we're gonna keep you, and we're gonna give you a little bit of a go around, and we're not gonna dump the price of crypto while you're live, but we're gonna get the Jets steamrolled by the Browns. So yeah, that's basically where we're at this point in time. And speaking of, the Jets Browns game starts in 4 minutes. So I am going to chug the rest of this beer, probably put about 45 more in my body because I am not confident that the Jets are going to do anything well. And Trevor Siemian is now the Jets starting QB, which is fairly depressing. So there's only one way to drown your sorrows, and that's in red stripe when you just had jerk chicken. So we're going to do that. I hope you enjoyed this quick crypto happy hour this evening. It's great speaking with all of you. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Hit the like button. Helps to get this video out. If you're new, by any weird chance, hit the subscribe button. Would love to see you here more often. But thank you so much for your time. Crypto Bobby signing out. Hope you have a good one.